Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're here, it means that you also enjoyed or recently watched My Lovely Runner and you'd like to hear some commentary about it. So I don't want to waste too much time. Let's get right into it. I want to start off with Im-sol and the way that a lot of people didn't really take kindly to her character. I don't really see it as black and white. I think there are a lot of gray areas. Number one, I can see why some people didn't like her character because she was a lot of the time rude and very quick with Sanjay, especially because she was trying to save his life and she was doing what she thought was best for him. However, it did come off a lot of the time very brash and very mean and quite rude, but by the time I got to the latter end of the show, episode 13, 14, 15, and I realized how much pain it was actually causing her, it made me rethink how I saw her. I think this is one of those shows that you have to watch 2 or 3 times to see things differently. And on the other hand, the people who really hated her character and almost the actress by just association, I think they took it too far because I think they fell in love with Sanjay because he is a romantic 100%. But I think people loved him too much to the point where they didn't want him to be hurt in any kind of way, that they were not able to see these two characters as characters in a whole story, but they were more focused on Sanjay and the actor, that they just offloaded all their hate and displeasure onto Im-sol and the actress as well. For a lot of people, this is their introduction to Kim Hye-Yoon, that is the actress who plays Im-sol, but I've been watching her since Sky Castle, and every single drama that this girl is in, I've never been disappointed. So when I heard she was in this, I just knew it was going to be 10 out of 10. So I will always trust in this actress. Her talent is superb. Her emotional range is superb. I really don't have any more compliments to give her. So I just think people need to stop hating on the actress specifically and maybe let's focus more on the character. Moving on, in terms of the time travel aspect, surprisingly, I didn't find it very difficult to follow. I did get lost a few times, especially when Seoul had to go back. I think the third time I did get confused and I didn't really understand how when Sanjay, oh, by the way, this is a spoiler video. I didn't really understand when Sanjay died the third time when he fell into the ocean. I didn't understand how she was able to go back in time and remember everything, but he wasn't. That's the one part I didn't really get properly. So, I mean, it's not a disappointment or it's not a letdown for me, but I just didn't understand that part. But I do think they handled it much better than a lot of other shows have attempted to. Case in point, I really do have to mention it. I hate to be that person, but A Time Called You is one of the most confusing dramas I've ever attempted to watch. The actors are phenomenal, but my goodness, is it hard to understand what's happening. I'm sure someone will understand. I'm sure many other people understood the plot, but it really had me confused, and I'm so glad that at least with this, I was able to follow along, understand, and sympathize with them. So the next thing that I love about this show is the reciprocity and mutual love that these two have for each other. Im-sol did not start loving him first and then try to convince him, to survive or make him fall in love with her. No. He loved her first because he took notice of her first. And then he was always in the shadows while she was living her life. And then he loved her for 15 years. And when they finally meet, she doesn't even recognize him. She's in a wheelchair and all she sees when she looks at him is this superstar, this idol. But what is so amazing about that is when she goes back in time, she now has to love him for 15 years. It's absolutely amazing. There's an equal amount of love between the two of them, and I don't mind if one person loves the other more, but I love the fact that at different moments in time, they have loved each other. this really is a love story that goes beyond time and space. And there's nothing more romantic than that. And speaking of wheelchairs, am I the only person who got really excited when I thought that the main character, Im Sol, was going to be in a wheelchair the entire time? At the back of my mind, I thought, well, maybe at the end or like the getting to the last 4 or 5 episodes, they'll probably find a way for her to walk again. But I really got excited. I thought, wow, I've never really seen that. We don't see a lot of disabled people in not just K dramas, but a lot of, mainstream media. And I loved the idea of a beautiful girl and a beautiful man falling in love regardless of her disability. And when I saw that she was trying to get a job, but she couldn't because there were no elevators, I don't know, I really felt for her. I'm not disabled and I don't know anyone who's disabled, but I really feel for people who most of the time the world doesn't adjust to them, even though they exist and are part of society. So I just was really excited, and I would have loved to see more of her in the wheelchair. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the lack of product placement. The drama looks expensive. You can see that a lot of money went into it. It's a high budget one. But surprisingly, there are no ads. I wonder how they funded the show. I hope this is not a dumb observation, but most times, the show is paid for because of product placements. So I'm just surprised that there was so much of an absence, especially because the show is doing very well. It did very well. The ratings were super high. It's a huge public favorite. So where are all the ads? Not that I'm looking for them, but I just thought it was odd, and I wonder if anybody else noticed the lack of product placements. Okay, let's take a little dark turn and talk about the show's serial Unaliver. I don't know how I feel about him. I know that a serial unaliver doesn't need a valid reason to target someone like the way he targeted Im Sol, but I wish we would have gotten a reason why he was like obsessed with her in each, time period. And I know maybe he liked the way she looked or he thought she was the perfect victim, but I would have loved to know just 2 minutes of what is going on in his mind and why he's doing what he's doing. I'm not gonna lie to you, when he unalived Sunjae the second time, that's when he broke into Sunjae's skyrise apartment and stabbed him. That felt a little unbelievable because Sunjae is a celebrity. He's also in a very expensive building, and I know that it's K-drama logic, so anything can happen, but I just thought, no, that's so unrealistic. There's no way that can happen. But all that aside, I would have loved to know more about his obsession with Im Sol. That's all. And the way that he met his demise, the way that he himself was unalived by a truck, I don't know. I mean, I'm happy that he's gone, but it just felt a bit anticlimactic. I would have loved to see him either go to jail or have some kind of speech where he explains his true motive. But I also understand why they didn't do that. They probably don't want to give such a dark character a platform or let him have a voice. So I guess I just have to agree to disagree with the way that was handled. But I'm not gonna lie to you, sometimes I did find him a bit annoying. Like, why is he ruining this comedic romantic drama with all his problems? Now, moving on, I want to talk about the second lead and second lead syndrome, which I surprisingly didn't have with this series, and I'm shocked because I usually always do. When I watch True Beauty, I really wanted the main girl and the second lead to get together. I didn't want her to get with Cha Eun-woo because, I don't know, I thought he was a bit stiff. But never mind, this is not a True Beauty review. But this was one of the first few times where the second lead didn't make me want him to be with the first main lead. So I think this shows how good they did with Sunjae, because honestly, from I think the second or third episode, I really fell in love with Sunjae's character and how they wrote him and how big of a green flag he was, that it was impossible for any other guy in the show to win me over. And putting aside that I enjoyed his character on screen, I really didn't see much use for him in the story, whether it was in the past or the present. And I know that in the future, he's the detective that helps catch and unalive the serial unaliver. But I still feel like any cop could have filled that role, or even his dad could have still been the cop that caught him, and it wouldn't have changed anything. Again, I like him and I like his character, and I think the actor was amazing, but story-wise, I didn't see much use for him. The next thing I want to talk about is the grandma and her role in the story. I'm glad she wasn't a mystical being or she had some kind of magical powers, and I'm gonna just assume that her dementia is the reason why she acted the way she did and the reason why she was able to remember so much. So at the final episode, she gives this brief speech about how even though you might forget things in your brain or in your mind, your soul does not forget. And because she has dementia, it doesn't matter if the past has been forgotten and Soul is the only person who has her memories because of the magical watch. The grandma can remember because to her, her mind is all scattered. So she's using her soul to remember everything. And that's why other characters seem to be repeating certain things they did in the past because their soul cannot forget what it naturally wants to do. In terms of how she's so involved in the watch, because she did throw the watch in the river under the bridge, that part I'm a bit unclear because even if she has dementia, how on earth does she know that the watch has powers? It's not like Im-Sol spoke to her about it or mentioned it to her. So, that's a little gap in the story, but I'm not gonna nitpick it. I think it's okay, and I think it was sweet the way that the grandma kind of reassured Sanjay and gave him her blessing, and the way that he burst into tears in just pure relief was relieving for even me watching. So now the last thing that I want to talk about before I close the chapter on this amazing show is the finale and the level of romance from episode 1 all the way to episode 16. One thing about K-dramas is they take their time in getting our characters comfortable, hugging each other, making out, things like that. Even cuddling is not the norm. In this particular show, for these teenagers, they were teenagers half the time and then they were adults another half the time, there was just so much skinship. It felt very natural. It felt like they were dating in real life. To be honest with you, some episodes and some scenes I would be watching and I felt like I was invading on their privacy. I would have to pause, and I often don't do that with K-dramas because they don't really show those kind of things, or they try to keep it very PG. And it's not like this was super explicit, but it just felt super intimate. I always felt like I was peeking in through the window like a creep. But the chemistry between these two actors for me really took this show from something that would have been simple and just plain to something that was extraordinary. I really have to commend them for that. And speaking of the proposal scene, I thought it was absolutely romantic. And at this point, there are some things that you have to expect from a K-drama, and this K-drama had everything. They had the rain, they had the snow, they had the umbrellas multiple times in multiple colors, and then they have the cherry blossoms. I think cherry blossoms are kind of picking up in terms of popularity because it was in Queen of Tears, which I didn't really like Queen of Tears that much. It was good, it just wasn't memorable for me, but no hate and no shade. But yeah, the cherry blossoms were there, and of course we had the wedding scene. I'm happy they didn't, have a long drawn out wedding and it was just like a premonition of theirs, like they could imagine themselves having it, and I'm happy that they ended it there because not that I'm a hater of weddings and love, but it's becoming a little bit too predictable and common that every couple gets married and has a wedding. It's like, okay, we get it. You're in love. But long story short, I absolutely enjoyed the finale. It was a perfect ending to an amazing story. And if there are going to be more K-dramas, especially those that are about romance, are going to be releasing this year, I hope that they are just as good as this, and I can't wait to see what's next. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Make sure to like this video and please subscribe if you can. And hopefully I'll catch you in my next video.